Welcome. This is Raul Laue Contreras. This is the Contreras Report Mexico edition. So let's talk about Mexico today. On June 6th, midterm elections will be held. That's a Sunday. It's an off year, non-presidential year. And we have a situation where the current majority party, Morena, M-O-R-E-N-A, led by AMLO, the President Lopez Obrador of Mexico, is in a position to win a lot of seats in the Chamber of Deputies. And some seats are allocated on the basis of proportional representation, percentage of vote. The party of Presidente Andres Manuel Lopez Obrador, Morena, where do they stand? Well, polls show that he can't get a majority of the Chamber of Deputies for his party. He must depend on splinter parties to accumulate a majority. But he can't reach, according to the polls, two national polls released within the past few days indicate that the Morena party will not reach a two-thirds majority by itself. If true, from the AMLO, that will keep Mexico from becoming another Mexican dictatorship, because AMLO wants to be a dictator. He wants to rule by decree, and when he's challenged, say, by lawsuits, he carries on about what he is doing is best for the country. Every dictator says that. For example, AMLO has attacked private electricity generation by holding up certification of new electrical generation facilities and promoting the government's takeover of all electrical generation and distribution in Mexico, shutting out private generation that accounts for, get this, almost 50% of Mexico's electricity. Now, recently there was a 12-hour blackout in the interior of Mexico. 12 states were affected. Those states happen to be serviced by the Comisión Federal de Electricidad, the CFE. That's the government. The blackout occurred over 12 states. Private electricity is generated and sold for 100 times less than government-generated electricity. Plus, all the government-generated electricity is through coal or oil burning. So it's not good for the climate. AMLO last year tried to take over electrical generation a year ago by decree. Lawsuits were filed, and these actions were overruled by Mexican courts, including the Supreme Court of Mexico just a few weeks ago. AMLO has announced that if he is required to change the Mexican Constitution to take over electricity, he will do so. But the problem with that is, to change the Constitution, he needs a two-thirds majority in the Chamber of Deputies, in the Congress of Mexico. That's why it is imperative to keep any margin, for the Mexicans, to keep any margin to less than two-thirds. Yes, with splinter parties, he can accumulate a 51% majority with about 5 different splinter parties, including the communists and the socialists. He needs those splinter parties to put together a two-thirds majority to change the Constitution willy-nilly at will. That brings me to how dumb parliamentary systems are. They are totally inferior to the American winner-take-all system. Now, except for when this last inauguration day, when President Trump left office at 12 noon on January 20th, refusing to accept that he lost the election, something that has never ever happened before. Except for that particular instance, the American political system is very simple: winner take all. Splinter parties ruin the quest for good government. Israel, for example. Though one party won more seats than the main opposition, several splinter parties hold the country hostage and keep the largest party that won the most votes from putting together a government. So they're operating under an interim situation right now, while they have a national defense situation with Hamas in the Gaza Strip. The parliamentary system, as we know it, whether it be in England or France or Turkey or everywhere, simply from the American view, from American standards, does not work. Does not work. Whoever gets the most votes in America wins, okay? Doesn't even matter if he doesn't even reach 50%. For example, Bill Clinton never reached 50%. Donald Trump never came close, either the 2016 election, which he won, or 2020, in which he lost. In both instances, he was wiped out. Clinton was wiped out. He only got elected with 42% of the vote in 1992 because Ross Perot, a third party, drained off enough votes to keep the Republicans from continuing to win, that they had been winning since 1980. The parliamentary system does not work. Italy, how many governments since World War II? 100? 90? 80? Now, how many governments in the United States since World War II? Truman, Eisenhower, Kennedy, Johnson, Nixon. Absolutely everything has been held in good order in the United States. It simply does not suffer from a situation. And if the opposition party gets control of Congress, like in 1984 when the Republicans did, the Republicans held sway for a long time until 2006. And then in 2010, the Republicans came back and took the House and kept it until 2018. That's how it should work. Winner take all. We don't have our country held hostage. Oh, Trump tried it, but it didn't work very well. We have our system archaic, yes, and the Electoral College makes some people raise their eyebrows, but the fact of the matter is it works. It works. A lot better than having Los Angeles, New York, Chicago, and Philadelphia, and a couple other cities actually control the country. This way, it's a lot different. With electoral votes, the power shifts to a number of states. A number of states share the power, and that's how our system works. And so a presidential winner gets 306 electoral votes, 5 million more votes than the other guy did on the popular vote. He's the winner, okay? If somebody gets 271, he's the winner because 270 are required to win the presidency. But in Congress, that's a little different story. It's a district by district. So what we have is winner take all, district by district, and we don't have proportional representation. The result is we have a government that sometimes doesn't always work efficiently. But that way, bad things can't be thrust into the throats of the American public. So the parliamentary system in Mexico is the same as the parliamentary system in Great Britain and France and Germany. And there you have minority parties that get votes, that get members elected, and they screw everything up, always. And when you have to put together a coalition, you can't really govern because that coalition can break apart at any time. Example, Israel. The governing party there, Likud, came within 2 or 3 members of having the majority. Yet they can't run the country except on an interim basis until they can put together a coalition. Coalitions are terrible. Coalitions mean that a party can't be a party. It has to compromise and do things that it would not otherwise do. So in Mexico, June 6th is the election. What we hope for is that Morena does not get a majority on its own, has to depend on splinter parties, and will fall short of the 2/3 situation in which the president of Mexico, AMLO, can become a one-man government and just go on, proceed by decree. We saw what happened when he took over. He didn't like the new airport being built outside Mexico City, yet it has won, even though it's been shut down, and cost billions and billions and billions of pesos and billions of dollars, translated into dollars. He shut it down and is now having the Army expand their airfield outside Mexico City, plus another one that they're revamping so they can use both of them. That is stupid. The shutdown of the airport was stupid. For example, in Tijuana, they're spending $100 million to expand the current airport. They're not trying to build a whole new airport, which they could, some other location, but they're not. AMLO didn't like the new airport. He didn't like the contractors that were working it, and he didn't want them to make any money. So he hands the job over to the Army. The Army can't do it. I can tell you that right now. The airport the Army is making or constructing is not going to be anywhere near what Mexico City needs. I have sat on the tarmac of the Mexico City airport because of fog for 5 hours till we got enough visual that we could take off. So I've been in and out of that airport a lot of times. And it's grown and grown, and it's certainly not what a major country needs. So the new airport was going to be that. In shutting it down, the payoffs to the contractors who had contracts amounts to more money than has already been spent. The Mexican people were ripped off because AMLO didn't like the airport there. In another instance, when he became president, he ordered a plebiscite in the city of Mexicali, which is the capital of Baja California, about 1 million people. He ordered a plebiscite there because an American beer company that makes Mexican beer was building a new facility in Mexicali. AMLO decides he didn't want the city to have an open brewery. No. So he had a plebiscite in which a few hundred people voted and voted against it. And so he shut it down by decree. By decree. Even though it was ready to open and have 1,000 Mexican nationals working full time in Mexico, in Mexicali, making beer, which is one of Mexico's leading exports. But that's what happens when you have a one-man government. You're going to have that over and over and over again. So on the election, June 6th, I recommend that every Mexican pick one of the non-governing parties, not one of the splinter parties. Stick with the PAN, P-A-N, and the alliance with the PRI and the PRD. Mind you, these three parties that used to fight each other can together keep a 2/3 majority from being elected and giving AMLO more power. Power he doesn't need. Okay, that's my Mexico report. The election is coming up June 6th. If you have friends that live in Mexico and are registered to vote there, they have to have been registered since February for this election. And they have a card with their picture on it and all that, the hologram. Everything we should have in the United States to vote, they have in Mexico. I suggest you call your friends who live in Mexico and vote in Mexico and suggest to them they vote against AMLO. Not because he's a bad person now, but if he ever got to a point where he could rule by decree, he would be a bad person. Trust me. You can smell the clues around him and his daily press conferences. And now he's even making a formal protest to the U.S. government because one of its agencies, AID, American International Development Agency, has given some grants to a couple of nonpartisan, non-government owned or operated NGOs that attack corruption, regardless of where they find it. AMLO is saying he's protesting that American money is being used by a Mexican political organization because it's against him, even though they had their greatest successes against the previous president and his administration. But because they don't kiss AMLO's feet or his ring, if you're a Catholic, you know what that means, he wants the U.S. government to not grant any money to organizations that the American government deems worthy. Searching out and ending corruption or making it public in Mexico is to Mexico's advantage. That is good for Mexico. When we see videos of the president's brother getting sacks of cash, we wonder, what kind of president is this whose brother is accepting paper bags full of 1,000 peso notes? That's $50 each 1,000 pesos, or roughly. And he's getting them by the bushel. Why? Well, because AMLO wants to be a dictator. He cannot run for re-election. Keep that in mind. Remember, in Mexico, it's one term only, 1 6-year term. He's reaching the halfway point soon, this coming year. And then he'll have to leave office. He wants to change it, put the government in charge of everything, and turn it into a 100% socialist country. Well, it's never worked anywhere else. It won't work in Mexico. The private electrical generation people that have been working since 2014, when the private companies were allowed into the energy business, produces 50% of the electricity in Mexico. 50%. Baja California, it's 100%. Okay? 100% is produced and sold through the government transmission lines. It cost me, my electricity in Baja California, just north of Rosarito Beach, cost me about $7 a month. That's it. That's it. Because they can only charge so much above what they pay. But in other parts of Mexico, that would cost, who knows, how many hundreds of pesos. Double, triple, quadruple. And then we would suffer blackouts. That's our Mexico report for May. June 6th is the election. Don't forget it. Call your friends and tell them to vote for anybody and any party other than AMLO's party, the Morena party. Thank you for being there. Now, if you haven't already subscribed, do so now. And every time we post a Contreras report, you will be notified. So subscribe on YouTube or on Facebook, and you'll get posted, or you'll be notified with every post. Thank you for being there. This is Raul Lowry Contreras. You can email me. The address will be up on the screen in a moment. So this is the Contreras Report Mexico edition. Thank you for being there. Until next time.